Hey guys, Matt Goodwin here. How many seats will Nigel Farage and the Reform Party win at this election? That's the million-dollar question that everybody is asking themselves.
I've taken on the European Union, I've taken on the big banks, and I'm pretty certain I can take on a Labour government headed by Keir Starmer.
A couple of things to keep in mind before I give you what I think is going to happen at this general election. Without blowing my trumpet, I've been more right than wrong over the last 10 years in British politics. The first thing to say is we are obviously in a first past the post system. It is a bloody nightmare for new small parties to win seats under this system.
This isn't just about replacing the Conservative Party. I think we need a new electoral system. I don't think first past the post is fit for purpose anymore in the 21st century.
They need to get that deep, concentrated support to try and convert seats at the election. Very, very difficult thing to do. They also really need to do two other things. They need to run a very good air war. They need to be very visible in the national media. They need to be basically carpet bombing the election campaign from above, leaders' debates.
There is a sense we need a revolt against this system. We need an electoral system where we get some proportional representation in Parliament. We need to break up the current model. And if we get a new kind of politics in Britain, we might just get some real change. What we're being offered, frankly, are two parties promising the earth, and nothing much will change regardless of who gets in.
Big announcements, polling, all that kind of stuff.
Past few minutes just closed a poll of debate watchers which finds that the winner of the debate, according to viewers, was Nigel Farage with 25%, followed by Angela Rayner on 19%, followed by none of the above on 14%.
But secondly, they also need a very, very good ground game. They need to be targeting voters in those seats, the kinds of voters that are going to vote for them. They need a get out the vote operation on polling day. They need to basically run a very tight, well-organised campaign in the constituency to turn those seats the way they want them to.
These are volunteers that have turned up and they're being given leaflets, posters, and they're being given clipboards. They're going to go out, they're going to canvass, campaign, leaflet. We're off to Jaywick, that's where we're going to start, and we better get going.
You're the star we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
Well, when Jesus had the star,
yeah.
You are our star.
Would you vote for me?
Of course, yeah, definitely. You've got your signature now, of course.
Let me know. Will you vote for me?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
What they're doing is not working.
Nothing's working.
No, nothing.
Lovely, thanks, Mike.
Don't say no politician never gave you anything.
I just think it's dreadful somebody throwing something over you. I take it that's an occupational hazard.
The Lib Dems historically have been very, very good at that ground game. Nigel Farage and the Reform Party, well, they're a new party. They don't have much in the way of resource and manpower yet. They still might struggle with brand recognition in some areas, with voters thinking, are they UKIP? Are they the Brexit Party? Are they Reform? All that kind of stuff. So keep that in mind. Now, if you look at the polls, we've had a number of more technical MRP polls, sort of flashier way of doing an opinion poll, and then we got those standard polls. Now, if you look at the MRP polls, there are some by companies like Savanta that say Nigel Farage and Reform are going to get 0 seats. And there are others by companies like YouGov which suggest that Nigel Farage and Reform might get around 5 seats. If you look at the normal standard polling, meanwhile, some of that suggests that Nigel Farage and Reform are definitely within the range of winning seats, because they're averaging now, with just a little over 10 days to go until the election, they're averaging 19% in the opinion polls, which is basically what you need in order to start tipping seats into your column. I had an opinion poll out this week with my company People Polling, which put Reform on a very high 24% of the national vote. That's the highest figure we've ever had for Reform in the polling.
Labour 35%, Reform 24%, Conservatives 15%, Lib Dems 12%.
YouGov had them on 19% recently. So those kinds of numbers suggest that actually Reform is very likely to win some seats. Now, my personal view on this, happy to be wrong on July the 5th, come back and see. I'll be doing some post-election analysis right here on our YouTube channel. My instinct on this is I think Reform are going to win 1 or 2 seats. I think Nigel Farage is going to win Clacton. We've had a constituency poll this week which suggests he's comfortably ahead in Clacton.
We need radical surgery in this country. We need braver politicians to stand up for us and represent us. And if you help me, as you promised you would, we will, on July the 4th, win this seat. I'm humbled to be here. I'm flattered by your reception. And I promise I will do my best. Thank you.
I think if he can't win in Clacton, he's unlikely to win anywhere, to be honest. The Conservative vote is going to collapse. The Labour candidate is not a particularly suitable candidate for Clacton, being very young, inexperienced, from a minority background in a seat that's 98% white. He's made some dubious comments about white people in his undergraduate dissertation, which Reform have been campaigning on locally. So if Nigel Farage cannot win in Clacton with a long history of voting for UKIP, then I don't think he can win anywhere. So I'm assuming Farage is in the House of Commons after the election. That brings us to some of the other seats that I'd be keeping my eyes on in terms of causing a surprise. Keep an eye on Richard Tice in Boston and Skegness. That's a seat with a long history of voting for UKIP. Keep your eyes on Wellingborough, where the Reform Party did very well at a recent by-election. Also keep your eyes on seats like Great Yarmouth, where again, long history of support for Euroscepticism at general elections. Those are the seats where I think probably a surprise or two could emerge on polling day. My gut reaction here is 1 or 2 seats for Reform, probably 5 million, 6 million votes nationally, probably dozens, if not hundreds of second place seats, and also evidence that Reform have directly hit the Conservatives by costing them dozens of seats at the election. Now, that might lead some people to feel deflated after the election, particularly Reform supporters who say, well, they thought they were going to do better. But if you put the performance in the context of small party politics in the first past the post system, that's enough for Reform to then stand up on the morning of July 5th and say, okay, now we're going to do a longer term strategy to take over the Conservatives. So as long as they have a presence in the House of Commons with Nigel Farage and whoever, that is basically all that really matters.
The whole game is changing. This old tired mantra that a vote for this party or that party helps the other side. And look, back in 2015 when I led UKIP, we took more Labour votes than Conservative votes. So frankly, let's be honest, the election's over. Labour have won already. Whether the majority is 200 or 350 is almost immaterial. The real question here is who is going to provide a voice of opposition in Parliament and in the country to a Starmer government. The Conservatives are incapable of it. They argue more with each other than they do standing up and fighting for their constituents or the country. And I think Reform needs to be in the House of Commons. And we've got a 5-year plan leading up to a general election of 2029. We're dead serious about this. The Conservatives had their chance. They've blown it.
Of course, Reform supporters would like to have 10, 15, 20 seats. That ain't going to happen unless you start to see Reform averaging 25, 30% in the national polls. What they're likely to see is that initial beachhead in the House of Commons with Nigel Farage winning in Clacton, maybe 1 or 2 others, but then also being able to say, hey, look, we're second place in all of these Labour-held seats in the Red Wall in Northern England. I've run the numbers on that, by the way, of the 100 seats where Reform are likely to poll strongest at this election, 75 of them are going to be held by the Labour Party after the election. So Nigel Farage is going to be able to say, look, we're the official opposition in lots of these Labour areas. They're also going to be able to say, look, we've completely helped to destroy the Conservatives in those more marginal Tory-held seats, and we've also cost a number of very prominent Conservatives their seats. So you're going to see Reform and the impact of Reform on multiple levels at this election. But my bet is the party winning somewhere between 1 and 3 seats, 5-6 million votes, lots of second places, and that is, you know what, a pretty good foundation for a party that was only founded a year or 2 ago, and which can then use that foundation to go on and try and stage a much bigger revolt during the 2024 to 2029 Parliament. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe. Matt Goodwin.